The walk. Once there was a wise and strong pharaoh. The country he ruled was peaceful, the crops were thriving, and the people were happy. But the pharaoh was not happy. He was lonely. One afternoon, the pharaoh paced slowly through the palace. The pharaoh decided to go for a walk. Just outside the palace, he asked a woman and her daughter if they would like to go for a walk with him. They said yes.
Hello, Pharaoh.
Would you like to go for a walk?
Yes, we'd like that very much.
They walked to the village. The pharaoh called out to some of the people they passed, and he stopped to speak with others. He began to feel less lonely. More and more of the people in the village joined the pharaoh on his walk. It was like a parade.
Hey, look down there.
They paraded all the way to the Nile River. They stopped at the dock and spent the afternoon laughing, talking, and enjoying each other's company. The pharaoh realized that he didn't feel lonely anymore. That night the pharaoh slept well. He knew that the next time he felt lonely, he could take a walk with his friends.
Pretend you're a kid in ancient Egypt. Write a story about the day you saved the village from some stampeding cattle.
Write a story about the day you actually got to speak to the pharaoh. Write about the time you and your friends snuck into a tomb and the mummy case opened up and... Did you ever wonder where donkeys go to nap? I bet the Sphinx would be a good place to look.
Do you like adventure games? I bet an adventure game like hide and seek or capture the flag would be really cool if you played it in ancient Egypt.
Here's an idea. You find an unusual artifact deep in an ancient tomb. There are some hieroglyphs on it and you break the code. What secret does it reveal?
I like stories about people who solve problems in clever ways. Write a story about how an ancient Egyptian saved the day when he or she used papyrus in an unusual way.
I love adventure stories. What kind of adventure could you have exploring an ancient tomb? Have you ever wondered what it would be like to live in ancient Egypt? Write a story about a typical day in your life as an Egyptian. Look in the fact book for some ideas.
Did you know that in ancient Egypt, people spent part of every year helping build pyramids? Imagine you lived back then and write a story about the time you and your mom decided to go visit your dad at the pyramid building site. Switching things around is a great way to make up a story. How about writing a story about the day the pharaoh became a servant and the servant became the pharaoh?
What if you worked in the pharaoh's kitchen and broke a special pot by mistake? How would you avoid getting into trouble?
I love to read stories about people from other lands, how they lived and what they did. Write a story about the daily life of ancient Egyptians. Use the fact book to help you.
Have you ever wanted to travel through time? Write a story about traveling back to ancient Egypt and telling a small group of people about your life.
Most ancient Egyptians never got to see the inside of a pharaoh's tomb, but you can. Write a story about the time you and your friends traveled to Egypt and discovered the secret opening to a long-lost tomb.
Write a story about the time you took a boat trip with your family to go visit your uncle's farm. Do you like to watch birds? Write a story about a boy who liked to sit by the Nile and watch birds. One day he lost track of time and you tell the story.
What if you were a sculptor and you were told to do a sculpture of the pharaoh? You were excited about the job, only the pharaoh just wouldn't sit still.
Pyramids around the world. Pyramids have been built all over the world. The Egyptians built the first pyramids 4,500 years ago as tombs for their rulers. Hundreds of years later, the Nubians, who lived south of Egypt, built smaller pyramids. The Nubian pyramids were also used as burial places. 2,000 years later, on the other side of the world, pyramids were built to be used as temples. In North America, the Mayans built pyramids with staircases leading to a flat top. In Central America, the Aztecs built pyramids with 2 shrines at the top. Priests performed sacrifices at the tops of the Mayan and Aztec pyramids to gain the favor of the gods. Long before the pyramids, all Egyptians were buried in shallow graves in the sand. Then mastaba tombs were built for royalty. A mastaba tomb was a rectangular building with a burial chamber underneath it. Djoser's pyramid began as a large mastaba made of stone. Then another, smaller mastaba was placed on top of the first. The final pyramid looks like 6 mastabas stacked 200 feet or 61 meters high. The bent pyramid may have been designed intentionally, or it may have been planned as a straight-sided pyramid. Either way, the completed pyramid has steep sides leading most of the way to the top. Near the top, the sides sloped more gently. Shortly after the bent pyramid was constructed, pyramids with straight sides were built, including those at Giza. Over 80 pyramids were built in ancient Egypt. Most of them are on the western bank of the Nile. Why? The ancient Egyptians associated death with the setting sun, and the sun sets in the west. Khufu's pyramid was 481 feet, or 146 meters, tall when it was first built. That's as tall as a 48-story building, or about 1.5 times the height of the Statue of Liberty. The base of the pyramid covers as much ground as 10 football fields. The Great Pyramid is made of more than 2 million blocks of stone. Most of the stones weigh 2.5 tons each. A small car weighs about 1 ton. Some of the largest blocks in the pyramid weigh 70 tons. Egypt is one country in the continent of Africa. Egypt lies next to the Mediterranean Sea in the northeastern part of Africa. The ancient Egyptian people who built the pyramids lived very close to the Nile River. Most Egyptian pyramids, including those at Giza, were built on the western bank of the river. The Nile River flows through Egypt from south to north. In the north, it fans out into a delta of flat land. The river was so important to the ancient Egyptians that they divided the year into 3 seasons based on the Nile. The first season, called Akhet, lasted from July to October. This was the flood season. When the snow on mountains far upriver melted into the Nile, the river flooded and overflowed its banks. The second season was called Perit. This season lasted from November to February, when the river returned to its normal size. The third season, called Shemu, was the hot, dry season from March to June, when the crops grew and were harvested. Calendar. The pharaoh had several different crowns. The crown of Upper Egypt is tall and white. The crown of Lower Egypt is short and red. It has a uraeus on the front. The uraeus is an image of a spitting cobra. The Egyptians believed that the uraeus could strike down the pharaoh's enemies. The pharaoh often wore both crowns at the same time. The 2 crowns together, known as the double crown, demonstrated that he or she was the ruler of the joined lands of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Vizier. The vizier helped the pharaoh run the government. He was in charge of public works, including the digging and maintaining of canals. He also settled disputes. For example, there were yearly disputes over land boundaries. When the Nile receded after flood season, stone boundary markers were sometimes swept away. The vizier kept written records of boundaries that helped him settle these disputes. The vizier was also in charge of collecting taxes. Every Egyptian paid taxes to the government. Taxes were paid in products, not in money. A potter paid his tax with pots, and a farmer paid his tax with cattle and grain. A farmer paid up to half of his crops in taxes. The appearance of the Sphinx has changed over the centuries. When it was first built, the Sphinx probably looked like this. Quite a while later, the Sphinx was painted. Today, the paint has worn off and the Sphinx has lost its nose. The Egyptians built pyramids one level at a time. After completing the first level of stones, they built ramps so that they could drag stones up to form the next level. Some experts believe that the Egyptians made one long, gently sloping ramp. This ramp would have been almost as wide as one side of the pyramid. It seems more likely that the workers constructed a ramp spiraling up each side of the pyramid. This way, workers could drag a stone up one ramp while other workers brought an empty sled down another ramp. The workers laid one layer of stones in place and then extended the ramps and brought up more stones for the next layer. When they reached the top, a large capstone was set in place. Next, the workers removed about 30 feet or 9 meters of the ramps and worked from scaffolding to smooth and polish the white limestone on the outside of the pyramid. By the time the men reached the ground, the pyramid was smooth and gleaming white.